In the last video, I said that reading the Bible would be the next thing we discuss, but let's first stop and talk about actually choosing a Bible to study out of. And this may seem elementary. You may think, is there really any science that goes into this? But the answer is yes, absolutely. Choose the right Bible. Now, I'm not going to go into extensive detail in this. There is a 5-minute Bible study podcast, and on that podcast, episode 5 is how to choose a Bible, where I spend over 30 minutes answering this question. But I'm going to share with you some of just the key facts from that podcast episode with you here. I want to talk to you just for a second about translation theory. And that is, why are there so many different Bible translations? The answer to that question is, people have tried to take the Bible and make it understandable for the average reader. But all the while, some people are more concerned with making the Bible as accurate from its original language as possible. And when you make the Bible and you translate it from Greek into English, and if you were to do it word for word, take the Greek phrase, write it in English, give that to the people. That sounds great. That would be what we call, it's called a Greek interlinear, where literally there are Bible translations called Greek interlinear translations, the Greek phrase above, the English phrase below, and that sounds great. The problem with that is you can't read that fluidly as a regular English reader. Even if you were not an average English reader, you were a scholar, to read that would be very difficult. It would be very broken because Greek word order, it's not concerned as much with word order as English is. And so it's very difficult. It would be very choppy. There's supplied words you'd have to supply in order to understand the Greek. And it's just a difficult process to read a very literal translation. So what Bible translators have done in the English is they have translated the Bible based off the theory of, let's translate the Bible to get the actual words into the people's hands, but in such a way that they can read it and understand it easily. More translations come out every so few years, trying to update the Bible translation using the common language of the day, the new modern English. And sometimes translators will try to be too contemporary. They will try to rather than give a more of a word-for-word, essentially literal translation, they'll shoot for more of a thought-for-thought and kind of adding commentary onto the translation as well. So if you were to look at this chart here, you'll notice on the far left of the chart, there's the Greek interlinear. That would be as literal a translation as you're going to find, but not easy to read. And as you move further to the right, you see there translations that get more away from literal translation to free, liberal, loose, thought-for-thought translation, to where on the far right of that spectrum is the Message. And the Message isn't even a translation. The Message, I would call the Message a paraphrase or just a commentary on the Bible. It's not the Bible. So you can see there how different translations, they get further and further away. That gives you an idea of what Bible you're holding in your hands. Is it a literal translation, or is it what would better be phrased an essentially literal translation? So here's what I want you to take away from all this, okay? All that may have just sounded like garble mush to you. Take everything I just said. There's the theory. And this is what you need to know. Pick up a Bible that is as literal as you can get while at the same time easily understanding it. Okay? Get a Bible that is as close to the left of this spectrum that you can find, meaning it's essentially literal, but it's also one that you can readily understand. And if you'll do that, first of all, if you can't understand the Bible, then you're probably not going to read it. And so you might have to read something that's a little less literal, like, for example, maybe an NIV, or maybe the Christian Standard Bible, less literal than the New American Standard Bible or the New King James Bible. But if you can understand that one, and if you'll read it, then do that. But here's the other thing. Read from that translation, but study from multiple translations. Never study from just the Bible that you regularly read from. What I mean by that is when you come across a Bible verse that I don't know what this means. I really got to get down, start using the tips that Aaron gave me in this Bible study series. Then I want you to do this. Pull out several different translations. Pull out a New American Standard Bible. Pull out a New King James Version. Pull out an NIV as well, and compare them all. We'll put this into practice in just a minute as we go through a passage of the Bible in Isaiah 28. Hang with us, but we'll come back to this point. Coming up next, tips you need to know about reading your Bible.